You ever look back at a single moment and think, yeah, that was the turning point right there? For me, it was a simple white envelope on our kitchen table. Nothing fancy, just my wife, Sarah's, loopy handwriting on the front. Emma and Josh's wedding. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Emma was one of Sarah's closest friends from college. They'd been through everything together, sorority parties, late-night cramming, even a wild road trip across the West Coast I still hear stories about. So, when Sarah told me she was flying out for Emma's wedding, it was a no-brainer. "Are you sure you don't want to come?" she asked, leaning against the counter, sipping her coffee. I remember laughing. "Babe, it's across the country. Plane tickets aren't cheap, and besides, you said it's mostly her college crew. I'd just be the random husband awkwardly hanging around." She smiled, that half-smirk she does when she knows she's getting her way. "True. Plus, girl time, right?" I didn't think twice. I trusted her. We'd been married 6 years, together for almost 10. Trust wasn't even something I questioned. She left the following Thursday, light blue suitcase, hair perfectly curled, wearing that summery white dress she knew I loved. She kissed me goodbye at the airport like it was any other trip. "Love you," she whispered. "Love you more," I replied. If only I knew. The weekend felt normal. That's the weird part. Sarah sent me pictures from the rehearsal dinner, her and Emma holding wine glasses, big grins on their faces. She texted me random stuff too. "Emma's mom is already drunk. You die at Josh's best man's speech. Total train wreck." It was all so ordinary. I spent Saturday working on the house, mowed the lawn, fixed that leaky faucet in the bathroom. Ordered takeout. Played Xbox way too late. Every now and then, my phone would buzz with a text from Sarah, photos of the wedding setup, her in this soft pink bridesmaid dress, her and Emma hugging, all smiles. Then, around 11 p.m., I sent her a "Good night, love you" text. No reply. I didn't think much of it. It was a wedding. Probably went late. She was drinking, dancing, having fun. But when I woke up the next morning and still had no response, there was this tiny, nagging feeling. You know the one, that pit in your stomach you can't quite explain. By noon, she finally texted back. "Sorry. Wild night. Hungover as hell. Boarding soon. See you tonight." That pit? It quieted down. I told myself I was being paranoid. She got home around 9 p.m. that night. I met her at the door, grabbed her suitcase. She smelled faintly of hotel soap and mint gum. We hugged, she kissed me, and for a moment, everything felt perfectly normal. "Good trip?" I asked. She smiled, but it felt tight. "Yeah, it was amazing. But I miss you." We ordered pizza, watched some Netflix, and she crashed early. But that pit? It was still there. The thing about cheating, about betrayal, is that it's not always some big, dramatic reveal. Sometimes it starts as a gut feeling, this quiet whisper in the back of your head that something's off. That week, I noticed small things. Sarah was quieter. Distracted. She'd zone out during dinner, pushing food around her plate like her mind was somewhere else. I caught her smiling at her phone a few times, but when I asked what was funny, she'd just shrug. "Just Emma, sending me the wedding pics." At first I bought it. But then came the late-night showers. She never used to shower before bed, she was a morning person through and through. But now, she'd disappear upstairs around 11, saying she just felt gross, or needed to unwind. Her phone, which usually sat on the coffee table or kitchen counter, was suddenly glued to her. Face down. Locked. I told myself I was overthinking it. People get weird after trips, out of routine, tired. But then, something small cracked it open. One night, Sarah was asleep next to me, breathing slow and steady, her phone buzzing on the nightstand. I don't know what got into me, curiosity, paranoia, but I glanced over. A text preview lit up the screen. "Had a great time with you. Wish it didn't have to end there." No name. Just a number. My heart was racing so fast I felt it in my ears. I debated waking her up right then, but instead I lay there, staring at the ceiling, 1,000 thoughts crashing into each other. In the morning I acted normal. I needed more than a single text. I needed the full picture. And God, I wish I hadn't found it. I spent the next 2 days walking around like a ghost, every conversation with Sarah feeling like I was acting in some terrible play. I'd smile, nod, ask about her day, all while my mind spiraled, wondering what that text meant. But I couldn't just accuse her without proof. That's what I kept telling myself. I needed facts, not guesses. So, one night, while she was in the shower, again, that late-night shower routine, I made my move. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen down, as usual. I picked it up, heart pounding so hard I thought it might wake her. She changed her passcode. That was new. But here's the thing, Sarah wasn't exactly creative when it came to passwords. I tried her birthday. Nope. Our anniversary. Strike 2. Then I remembered the date she started her current job, a day she always said changed her life. It unlocked. There it was. The thread with the unknown number. Dozens of messages. My hands were shaking as I scrolled. It didn't take long to confirm the worst. That night was unexpected. But damn, I don't regret it. I can't stop thinking about you. And then, the one that hit like a sledgehammer. If I could go back, I'd still do it. Even if it was wrong. I kept scrolling, jaw tight, reading message after message. That great time, he mentioned? It wasn't some innocent dance or a flirty conversation. It happened after the wedding, in his hotel room. The kicker? It wasn't some random guest. It was Josh. The groom. Sarah had slept with Emma's future husband the night before her wedding. I sat there, staring at the screen, every part of me numb. It wasn't just betrayal, it was betrayal wrapped in chaos. When Sarah came out of the shower, her hair damp, wearing one of my t-shirts, I couldn't even look at her. "Everything okay?" she asked, drying her hair with a towel. I didn't say anything. Just set her phone down on the bed, screen still lit with the messages. She froze. And that's when the real unraveling began. The room went dead silent. Sarah just stood there, towel in hand, her wet hair clinging to her face. She didn't even try to touch the phone, just stared at it like it might explode. I could feel my pulse in my throat. "So, are you gonna say something? Or should I read more?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally sat on the edge of the bed, the towel dropping to her lap. She swallowed hard. "It wasn't supposed to happen." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so absurd, it was the only reaction I had left. "You hooked up with the groom, Sarah. The night before his wedding. Explain to me how that just happens." She buried her face in her hands. "We were drunk. He was freaking out about the wedding, Emma was off with her family, we were just talking, and then..." I cut her off. "Talking?" My voice cracked, anger spilling over. "You don't accidentally end up in bed with someone, Sarah. You don't trip and fall into that." She didn't argue. The walls felt like they were closing in. My whole body was tense, fists clenched at my sides. I wanted to scream, throw something, but instead I sat on the edge of the bed, a good 2 feet away from her, like even that was too close. "Do Emma and Josh even know I know?" I asked. Her face twisted with guilt. "No. Josh texted me that one time after, but we both agreed to keep it quiet. Pretend it didn't happen." I stood up. "You let her marry him, knowing this? You sat there at the damn wedding, all smiles, like nothing happened?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't want to ruin it for her. It was one mistake, and I thought that you could bury it." I finished for her. Neither of us said anything for a beat. The weight of what she did, of what it meant, just hung there. Finally, I asked the question I didn't want the answer to. "Would you have told me if I hadn't found out?" She didn't answer. And that was my answer. I grabbed my keys and walked out. Sometimes you just need air, space, before you can figure out what the hell comes next. I don't even remember where I drove that night. I just remember the feeling, like my whole chest was caving in. The kind of pressure you can't breathe through. I ended up parked outside some 24-hour gas station, engines still running, headlights cutting through the dark. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, just lost. Was I supposed to call Emma? Tell her that her brand new husband had cheated on her the night before their vows? Or was that not my place? And then there was Sarah. My wife. The person I'd built an entire life with. 10 years together, 6 married, and in one weekend she'd bulldozed all of it. I thought about the small stuff, inside jokes, Sunday morning pancakes, that dumb little dance she did when she was excited. All of it felt like it had been hollowed out. My phone buzzed. Sarah. Again. I didn't answer. Instead, I texted my buddy Matt. You home? A minute later. Yeah. Everything good? Can I crash on your couch tonight? He didn't ask questions. Just sent me a thumbs up. When I showed up at his place, he opened the door, took one look at my face, and just said, "Shit. What happened?" I sat on his crappy leather couch, cracked open a beer, and told him everything. Matt didn't interrupt. Didn't say, "Damn man," or, "That sucks." He just listened, which was all I really needed right then. When I finally got to the part about it being the groom, Josh, he just blinked stunned. Dude. That's... I don't even have words for that level of screwed up. Yeah. I stared into my beer like it might give me some kind of answer. I keep thinking, what if I never found out? She'd just keep going, acting like it never happened. Matt shook his head. That's the part that stings the most, man. The lies after the fact. He wasn't wrong. I crashed on his couch that night, barely sleeping, just replaying everything in my head. The wedding. The texts. Her face when I confronted her. By morning, I still didn't know what the hell I was supposed to do next. But I knew one thing. I couldn't just bury this like she had. Emma deserved to know. The next morning, I woke up on Matt's couch with a stiff neck and the sour taste of cheap beer still in my mouth. Sunlight was creeping through the blinds, slicing across the room like it had no idea my entire world had imploded the night before. Matt was already in the kitchen, scrambling eggs, like the solid friend he was. You gonna tell her? He asked, not even looking up. Emma? I rubbed my eyes. I don't know, man. It's not like she's just some random person. She was Sarah's best friend. Exactly why she should know. He wasn't wrong, but damn, it felt heavy. I sat there for a minute, thinking about Emma. She was sweet, always had been. One of those people who actually remembered birthdays and sent real, handwritten thank you notes. I pictured her at that wedding, smiling, dancing, probably thinking it was the best day of her life, while Josh, her brand new husband, was hiding the worst kind of secret. I couldn't sit with that. I pulled out my phone, found Emma's number buried in a group chat from Sarah's bachelorette party planning, and stared at it for a second. Then I typed out, Hey Emma, this is David. I know this is really out of the blue, but I need to talk to you. It's important. Can we meet up? The 3 dots popped up almost immediately. Hi. Sure? Is everything okay? Not really. I wouldn't text you if it wasn't serious. We agreed to meet at a quiet coffee shop downtown. The drive there felt like heading to a funeral. Emma was already sitting at a corner table when I got there, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, no ring on her finger yet, probably still getting it resized or whatever newlyweds do. She smiled when she saw me, but it was one of those hesitant, confused smiles. Hey David! This is unexpected. Yeah. Thanks for meeting me. I sat down, and for a second, I couldn't get the words out. I could feel my throat tightening, my hands sweating. Then I just said it. Emma, I didn't come here to hurt you, but you need to know, Josh wasn't faithful to you. Not even before the wedding. She blinked, like the words didn't register right away. I don't understand. It happened the night before your wedding. He hooked up with someone. Her face drained of color. Who? I hesitated. Who, David? I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Sarah. For a moment, the whole coffee shop seemed to go quiet. Emma's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes glossed over like she was somewhere else entirely. My Sarah? She finally whispered. I nodded. I found the texts. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't sure. She sat back hard against her chair, like I'd physically shoved her. A tear slid down her cheek before she could stop it. Jesus Christ, she muttered. They acted like nothing happened. Like everything was fine. I didn't have any comforting words. There weren't any. She wiped at her face, sniffling. Thank you for telling me. Even if it wrecks everything. I nodded. I figured you deserved the truth. She left without finishing her tea. And I sat there for a while, wondering how many lives just got flipped upside down because of one night's worth of selfish choices. But I didn't regret telling her. Some truths just can't stay buried. I barely made it home before my phone started blowing up, first with texts then calls. Emma, Sarah, even Josh. I ignored all of them. I sat in my driveway for a minute, the engine still running, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was holding me together. Then my front door swung open, and there was Sarah, standing on the porch, phone in hand, her face a storm of panic and guilt. You told her, didn't you? She called out before I even got out of the car. I killed the engine and stepped out. Yeah. I did. She let out this half-sob, half-laugh sound. David, you didn't have to do that. Didn't have to? I cut her off. You slept with her fiancé the night before their wedding, Sarah. She deserved to know. She deserved the truth, not the pretty version you were trying to bury. She crumpled right there on the porch steps, tears running down her face, hands shaking as she tried to talk. God, I know I messed up. I know I did. But I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I stood there, looking at her, really looking at her, and felt this hollow, empty ache. You lost me the second you made that choice. Her shoulders sagged like the words physically hit her. Before I could say anything else, her phone lit up again, Josh's name flashing across the screen. I shook my head. You still talking to him? She scrambled to end the call, fumbling with the phone. No. I haven't since. But it didn't matter. That was it for me. I'm done, Sarah. My voice was flat, final. I don't think there's anything left here worth saving. Her face crumpled, but I couldn't stand there and watch her fall apart, not after everything. I turned and walked inside, locking the door behind me, leaving her on the porch. It wasn't some dramatic TV moment, no screaming, no throwing things, just this cold, heavy ending. I packed a bag that night. I didn't know where I was going yet, but I knew I couldn't stay. Because sometimes, love doesn't die in big, fiery crashes. It dies in quiet moments, in choices people don't come back from. And this was one of them. I crashed at Matt's place again that night, this time with more than just a duffel bag. He didn't ask questions, just shoved some pizza boxes aside and made space on the couch. Figured you'd be back. He muttered, sliding me a beer. Didn't really have a choice. I replied, staring at the blank TV screen like it might give me answers. The thing about betrayal is that it lingers. It sits with you, even in the quiet moments. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, lying there on Matt's lumpy couch, wondering how everything had unraveled so fast. I checked my phone. More texts from Sarah. Please talk to me. I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm sorry, David. I don't know what else to say. And then a new one from Emma. Thank you. I know that couldn't have been easy. Short. Simple. But heavy with everything left unsaid. I debated for a minute, then texted back. I'm sorry it had to be me who told you. Her reply came almost instantly. Better you than finding out years later. You did the right thing. That felt like a small weight lifted, but it didn't make the situation any less messy. The next few days were a whirlwind: lawyers, paperwork, dividing up stuff that, a week ago, felt like ours but now just felt like debris. Sarah tried, I'll give her that. She called, texted, even showed up once at Matt's place, but I didn't let her in. I wasn't angry in the screaming, throwing things away. I was just done. Sometimes that's worse. But the part that really stuck with me? 2 weeks later, I got another text from Emma. I left him. Couldn't stay after knowing what he did. I sat there, staring at the message, feeling this weird mix of sadness and relief. She'd made the hard call. I wanted to say something profound, but all I sent was, "You deserve better." We both did. No response. Didn't need one. We'd both been burned by the same fire. Now it was about figuring out what life looked like after the smoke cleared. 6 months later, it still hit me sometimes, random moments where the whole thing would creep back in. I'd be in line grabbing coffee, or walking through the grocery store, and suddenly, bam, I'd remember that weekend like it had just happened. But the sting? It wasn't as sharp anymore. Life had shifted. I moved into a small apartment downtown. Nothing fancy, just enough space for me and the quiet. The kind of place where I didn't wake up to memories in every corner. Sarah and I went through the motions, divorce papers, splitting things up, all that cold, bureaucratic stuff that makes the end of a marriage feel like closing a business deal. She cried the last time we saw each other, standing in the lawyer's office. I didn't. I think I'd already cried everything out long before that. Emma? I heard through a mutual friend that she moved back to her parents' place for a bit. Took time off work. I never reached out again. It wasn't my place, and honestly, I think we both wanted distance from the mess that tied us together. But I'll never forget that hollow look on her face in the coffee shop. The exact same one I probably had when I first read those texts. Funny how people's lives can crash in the same moment, and yet spiral out in completely different directions. The hardest part? It wasn't the betrayal. It was the aftermath, the quiet. The sitting alone at night, and wondering what signs I missed, what moments I brushed off, what little red flags I ignored because I trusted too hard. But over time, the anger faded. So did the guilt. I started going out again, nothing crazy. Trivia nights, happy hours, that sort of thing. Even went on a few dates. Awkward at first, but normal. Good even. One night, months after the dust had really settled, Matt and I were sitting at this dive bar, beers in hand, watching some meaningless game on TV. He looked over and said, "You're not carrying it the same way anymore." "Carrying what?" I asked. "All that weight. You seem lighter." I didn't answer right away, just stared into my beer for a second before finally saying, "Yeah, I guess I am." Because here's the truth about betrayal. At first, it knocks the air out of you. But eventually, after all the chaos, the screaming, the heartbreak, you find solid ground again. You figure out who you are without them. And sometimes, that version of you? It's stronger.